The Biochemical Society and Portland Press are pleased to welcome you to this webinar, which is part of our Biochemistry Focus webinar series. Topics in the series include different research areas in the molecular biosciences, as well as practical sessions to support career development. Each webinar will give you the opportunity to ask questions via text. We welcome suggestions for future topics and speakers to feature in our webinar series. Please see the website for more details. My name is Stéphanie Kermorgant. I am currently chair of the Biochemical Society Grant Panel, and I work at Bart's Cancer Institute, which is also called the CRUK Centre of Excellence, and is part of Queen Mary University in London. My group works on the membrane receptor signaling and endocytic trafficking in cancer. The Biochemical Society offers a program of grants for all career stages, supporting research, attendance at scientific conferences, and the sponsorship of events. In today's webinar, we welcome Joanna Kargul, Hood, and Helen Mott to discuss some of the Biochemical Society's main grant schemes with the aim of highlighting what information you need to include for a successful grant application. Before I hand over to our first speaker, I'd like to mention that questions will be asked at the end of the webinar, but please do send in your question during the talks. If you have a question, please type it in the question box as shown in the image on the screen, and we will try to answer as many as possible at the end. If we are limited in time, please hold on after a bit later, hold on the system. We will answer you on the chat if really we are limited in time. Okay, so let's start. Our first speaker today is Dr. Joanna Kargul from the University of Warsaw. Joanna will be discussing general travel grants and the Travel Award for International Skills and Knowledge Exchange. Joanna?
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope that you can hear me all right. Okay,
yes,
brilliant.
Very good.
Okay, thanks so much. It's a great pleasure to talk about two of the grant schemes that, as the member of the grants committee, I've been involved in evaluating applications within these two grant schemes, namely the General Travel Grants and the Travel Award for International Skills and Knowledge Exchange. Let me just make the screen, the full screen. I hope it's visible all right. So I'm Joanna Kargul, and I'm a professor at the Warsaw University at the Center of New Technologies. I'm the head of Solar Fuels Lab, and as the name suggests, you probably can guess that I work on artificial photosynthesis, on the devices that convert solar energy into renewable fuel and chemicals. In another line of research, we investigate molecular mechanisms of the natural oxygenic photosynthesis. And I've been with the Society for over 20 years, in the grants committee for the last 5 years. Okay, well, let's talk about these two grant schemes, and let's start with the general travel grants. Within this scheme, each successful applicant can apply for up to £750 to support attendance at face-to-face scientific meetings, training courses or lab visits. These grants are available to postgraduate, early career, full and emeritus members of the Society. Generally, we provide awards within this scheme up to £500, between £300 and £500, but in exceptional applications, really well justified, where the applicant shows the benefits of attending a particular event within this scheme that is really very beneficial to their career, and they also have excellent portfolio. We can support up to £750 to attend a particular event. For virtual events, the Society recently launched a new scheme called Online Attendance Grants, These grants support virtual events and live streaming. Testimonials from past recipients show that this extremely popular grant scheme has benefited a number of researchers from various stages of their research careers, from vice chancellors, professors like Diane Ford, to postdocs, PhD students, but also technicians. So we try to be as inclusive as possible when we evaluate applications within the General Travel Grant Scheme. The applications within this scheme are assessed according to three main criteria. The first criterion is benefit to career gained from attendance to a particular event that you're applying for. Financial need for support has to be very well justified, and last but not least, you need to provide, or you need to ask your supervisor or head of the department, in the case of postgraduate and early career researchers, for a letter of support, and in the case of lab visits, you need to provide a letter of support from your host lab. Let's look at the first justification of the first part of your application, where you need to provide a really good and strong explanation how the General Travel Grant will allow you to gain some really important benefits at your particular stage, in your stage of your career. So in other words, you need to provide explanation. First of all, how will you be participating in the conference? In other words, will you be presenting a poster, or will you be giving an invited talk? Are there any specific sessions? And you really need to be specific. The more specific you are, the stronger this part of the application is. Are there any specific sessions you think will be particularly beneficial for you, for your research or your networking? Any specific speakers you would like to meet and discuss your research and possible future collaboration? Third point is that you need to explain in your application is how will you be attending, how will attending this conference or training course or the lab visit further your career? And this is, of course, closely related with the previous point that I was talking about. So you need to provide very specific details of whether the aim is to form collaborations, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, or whether you aim to further your knowledge in a particular area, for example, the area that is not currently being pursued by you. Last but not least, are there any other achievements or outputs that are relevant to your application? In the case of the second criterion that we evaluate in the General Travel Grants applications is the financial need for support. So there you need to provide a very clear and detailed breakdown of costs, and you really need to be specific meticulously, quite meticulously, because we do spot inaccuracies and they may affect the evaluation of your application. You need to provide the details of provision for travel in your research grant or PhD program that you're currently undertaking. You need to answer the question, why the funds are being sought, are you seeking from the society, why the specific level of support is being requested, especially relevant to for the applications where you request the maximum possible funding, just to remind you of £750. Finally, you are encouraged to apply for other funding, and you need to list where you applied, for what amounts, and whether you already know the outcome of these applications. So this is quite important, and we very much appreciate that the applicants are proactive in sourcing funding from other organizations. Now let's talk about the last criterion which we evaluate in the applications for within the General Travel Grant Scheme. The letter of support from the supervisor or head of the department, just to remind you again, which is required for postgraduate and early career researchers, and in the case of lab visits from the host lab. What does it mean, a strong letter of support? The strong letter of support will really need to show the case that the financial need is really strongly supported. There is a strong justification for the specific amount that is requested. A very important part of the good support letter, strong support letter, is evaluation by the supervisor or the head of the department or the lab host of the academic promise of the applicant, and also explanation of benefits of attending a particular conference, training course, or the lab visit, how attending these events will benefit the career of the applicant. In the case of lab visits, you will be also required to upload a letter from your lab host alongside the letter of support from your supervisor or head of the department, whatever is applicable in your circumstances. Let's talk about the next travel scheme now, the Travel Award for International Skills and Knowledge Exchange, commonly known as the FISCE. Within this scheme, the successful applicants can obtain up to £2,000 to support research capacity building in lower income economies. These grants are available for postgraduate, early career, full and emeritus members, so similar to a general travel grant scheme. The visit should last between 2 up to 4 weeks, and this grant is intended to cover reasonable, and I emphasize the word reasonable, travel, accommodation and subsistence costs during your visit. A very important aspect of this grant scheme, which is not present in the general travel grant scheme, is that there must be an element of teaching during the Travel Award for International Skills and Knowledge Exchange. For example, something like giving research seminars would be a good example of such element of teaching. A number of applicants from lower income countries have benefited from this scheme, and this is just one of the testimonials showing how this grant benefited, allowed for strengthening the collaboration between the University of Oxford and KNUST. Of course, there are many other applicants who benefited from this very scheme. Applications are assessed according to 3 main criteria. Similar to general travel grants, you need to justify what benefits this particular exchange will have on your career or research. Again, you need to provide meticulous breakdown of financial aspects of this scheme. So you need to justify very specifically the financial need for support. And you also need to provide the teaching and dissemination of knowledge plan. In the case of the first criterion, the benefit that the exchange will have on the applicant's career of research, in your application, you should address the following points. What specific training will be undertaken or carried out during your visit? What skills of knowledge you will develop or teach when you realize this particular exchange? What impact this visit will have on your current research or your career? A very important aspect that strengthens the application is explanation of any barriers that you might have encountered in your career, and that you think this scheme, obtaining this grant, will allow you to overcome. Last but not least, you need to provide bigger picture, what problem, what major issue this particular research training aims to solve. In terms of justification of financial need for support, you need to provide a clear and detailed breakdown of costs of your exchange visit, provide details of a provision for travel in your research grant or PhD program. You need to explain why funds are being sought from the society and why at this specific level of financial support. And you also encourage to apply for other funding to help attend the lab visit. And of course, you need to provide details of such applications and their outcomes. The last criterion is the teaching and dissemination of knowledge plan that needs to be quite detailed. So we evaluated based on the following aspects. You need to provide detailed plans for the dissemination of knowledge that is going to be transferred, how the knowledge or skills will be transferred beyond the fellow or host lab to improve research in lower income economy country that you come from. You need to provide very specific examples of knowledge transfer. For example, will you be conducting research seminars, organizing workshops? Will you be generating some training resources, training materials, or other training resources? Last but not least, you need to provide indication of the scope. So how many people will benefit from the exchange, what research or experiments will be carried out as a result of this training, this exchange, and what skills will be developed, both research and soft skills. And that's basically it. And I very much welcome your questions in the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joanna. That was a very, very detailed explanation for these two very important schemes. And we will see you at the Q&A. Thank you so much. So now we have our second invited speaker. It is Professor Ian Hood from the University of Leeds. And Ian will be discussing our sponsored seminar series grant. So hello, and we will have a look if your slides are coming. Excellent. And I think you're maybe...
Right, thank you very much.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name's Ian Wood. I'm a professor of neuroscience in the University of Leeds. So I've been a member of the Biochemical Society now for over 20 years, a long time. I've actually been part of the grants committee for 5 years. So I've seen a lot of grants and applications and got a lot of experience in terms of the kinds of things people would like to know and what makes a good application. I've seen a number of good applications. This morning, I'm going to talk to you specifically about the sponsored seminar series grants that we award from the Biochemical Society as part of our drive, a part of our aims to promote the importance of biomolecular sciences. So we provide funding to assist with the costs of hosting a seminar series that has guest speakers throughout the year. The applicant and the organizer for the seminar series itself, they don't have to be the same person, but both must be, if there are two, must be a member of the Biochemical Society. They can be any kind of member, a postgraduate, an early career member, a full member, or an emeritus member. We provide 4 tranches of grants in values of £500, £750, £1,000, or £1,500 available to help with the seminar series. It doesn't have to, the grant or the seminar series doesn't have to be restricted to that amount of money that you ask for. It's reasonable to have a contribution for the Biochemical Society, and that's made up with other funds, maybe other departmental funds or funds from another organization. We do require that the speakers, when they give the talks within the series, does give a talk that has a biochemical or a molecular biology focus. So this does meet with the aims of society to promote the importance of biochemistry and molecular biology. The grant itself, we expect it to be used, and it's intended to be used for travel costs for the guest speakers or for catering, particularly catering for all of the audience and the speakers for some type of networking event, either before or after the seminar. Should mention here that we don't intend, or we don't allow the money or the grant to be used for honoraria for speakers, or to provide for gifts for individuals who speak. I know that has come up in the past. We really want this to be focused on travel costs and catering for network type of events. We're particularly keen to promote early career researchers and their ability to network in the scientific community and help them step up. So here's some examples of previously funded seminar series. So you can see the range of things that we have funded in the past. So they must have a biochemical or a molecular biology type of focus, but it can be in any area. We've provided money for seminar series on biophysics and molecular genetics. We've done some around neurodegenerative and neurodevelopmental disorders. Both of those are reasonably broad. We have a sponsored one on ubiquitin with its role in health and disease, which is somewhat more focused. Again, another reasonably broad area, integrative membrane protein structural biology. I'm not sure why this was, but this is a particular strength of the University of Leeds. I'm not sure. I don't think it was with us though. I think it was one of the other universities in the UK. And also one that talks about rare diseases and the biochemistry and the biomolecular mechanisms of specific rare diseases. So the topic can be on anything, but we just really want the content to be biochemical and molecular biologically focused. The applications themselves, it's important to understand how they're assessed, so you can actually write an application with the best chance of success and give us the kind of information that will help us assess it appropriately, because we would like to give this money away. We have it in budget to give it to specific seminar series. So we would like to provide the money, but we need to make sure it's being used appropriately and acceptable to the society and the society's aims. So when we assess them, first of all, we look at the balance of the program and the intended audience. So here we're looking at what is the focus of the program, what kind of speakers do you have? So we'd like to see a nice diversity of speakers, and that's in career progression, in gender, ethnicity. We'd like to see a broad as possible diversity of actually the program, and also the audience. Which audience is this actually intended for, and what is that audience makeup going to be? And the more information you can provide about the audience, now how many early career researchers do you normally get at your seminars in this sort of area? How many senior academics will you get? How many external people might you actually be attracted to this program and may come in from outside? So all of that kind of information is very useful for us to understand the program itself. If you can specifically identify and be explicit about the promotion of the molecular biosciences and how you see that your seminar series is going to promote the molecular biosciences, that's really helpful. And the more explicit you can be, the easier it is for us as we're assessing these applications. And then lastly, we'll need the financial need for support. Kind of what money do you need, what cost do you need, why do you need it, and what are you going to actually use the money that we give you to support as part of your application. Okay, the balance of program and the intended audience. So I mentioned we really need to include answers to the following key points. If we break it up, mentioned we do want a diverse audience. Is there a clear balance in gender, geographical location, and career stage of the speakers themselves? Have you provided a good mix, and have you got a good thought about what your seminar speakers actually look like as a cohort? You would do this for a scientific meeting. Seminar series tend to be spread out over a number of months with individual speakers at one given time, but look at them as a cohort and see what the mix is like, and if there is a proper balance. And that's what we would like to see, a proper balance in that cohort of individuals. Also, what is it that's actually going to be covered? What kind of consideration have you given to the topics that are included in the program, and why have you picked these topics? What's important here? What's key as part of this seminar series? And will the seminar series actually be appealing to multiple demographics? And again, thinking about different scientists in different parts of their career stages. Will it be appealing to all of those and different audience? And what will your audience actually look like? The more information you can give us on that, the better. If we understand what the speakers will be like and what the audience will be like too, and then actually what will be discussed as part of the program. And those will give us a good understanding of the program and how that program fits in with the aims of the Biochemical Society. Speaking about the aims of the Biochemical Society, one of our main aims is to promote molecular biosciences disciplines, and so we will need you to demonstrate how your seminar series does that. I think successful applicants, when we've looked past them, have done this very well, have done it explicitly, and have demonstrated these types of points that we've picked out here, which we feel are particularly important and particularly beneficial for our seminar series. So the first one is you're facilitating the sharing of expertise. So we'd like to get experts in the field, people with maybe specific technical expertise or specific knowledge in an area, to actually come and share that with your audience within your institute. Tell us how it can support the advancement of biochemistry and molecular biology. Maybe it will help your institute and researchers in your area actually make links with some experts and actually push into a new area or a new technique or a new way of doing things, and put that explicitly in your application. How is it going to do that in your organization? And then also, how's it going to raise awareness of the importance of molecular bioscience? Particularly if you can, how will this raise awareness of how we have used molecular biosciences to address some of the grand challenges we currently have in society. As much of this as you can put down within your application, the better. We appreciate not everyone can do all of these. Not every seminar series is going to be everything to all people. But if you can identify where your particular seminar series actually addresses these points, that would be extremely useful and helpful in when we're actually assessing it. And there's some examples here about how you can do that, kind of indicate the scope, kind of how many people will attend, what will the audience actually look like in terms of their career stage, and how are you targeting the series. Are there any particular opportunities that you have or you can foresee or you're going to take for networking opportunities? And that's really popular, really useful thing to include in your program. Ways that you can network, maybe specific ways that you can get early career researchers to interact with a more senior member who's come to speak, to help them really get along with their career and their understanding. And then a good indication of which topics will be specifically covered. And maybe if you can, plan a detailed breakdown of some of the sessions or the lectures. You may know which lecturers and which speakers you want, or which areas you want to actually cover within your seminar series. The more detail you can give for that, the better. And lastly, the financial need for support. So here we'd like to see, well, what current funding do you have available, maybe through your institute or from another organization, that will help you put on this seminar series. So if you've already got some funding, but you've not got complete funding, we're more than happy to look and co-fund a seminar series with another organization, or to top up some of your institutional support for a seminar series, to make the seminar series bigger, longer, make it more impactful. So if you've got some current funding available, that won't preclude getting some from the Biochemical Society. And we're often quite keen to help support something to make it bigger if we can add some more funds to it. And so there's some key points that are listed here that you try and incorporate in your application. Again, as much detail and as many of these points that you could include, the better, the more strong your application will look like. We do expect a clear and detailed breakdown of costs. Some of these you will likely to have to estimate. If you're looking at travel costs, you can get a good estimation of what the travel costs might be for train or plane fares. Get an idea of what they might be. We don't need to know the precise penny for how much it is going to cost, because we may not know that ahead of time. But at least a rough idea of what specific costs will be, what they will be used for. Details of existing funding that's available from your institution. So that may be funding that you have got and secured already, or funding that you haven't yet secured but you are currently applying for. and maybe tell us whereabouts in that application you are if you're doing that. So that's always really helpful for us to know as well, in terms of what are the financial aid do you have to run these seminar series. Guess and then justify why is it you're asking funds from the society, and what particularly and why are you asking for the particular level? So there's 4 different levels of support that we will provide. We do expect you not just to necessarily pick the highest, but pick the one that's appropriate for you for your seminar series, and justify why you're asking for that specific level. And the last thing on the financial needs support is what you will use the requested funds for. So I've talked about you can use them for travel, and we want some breakdown about what kind of travel, from where, if you know where the speakers are coming from. You may know some of your speakers. The more of your speaker list that we can have, or that you can have already confirmed, the better, or some idea of who you might approach if you haven't approached them yet, and where they might be coming from. The more of that information you can provide, the more detail you can provide in what your travel and potential accommodation costs for your speakers are going to be. Catering, again, if you get an idea of your audience size, and if you've got a networking event, how many people you might expect to be there, what the catering costs in your institution are for doing that. And also, if you want to engage with some promotional materials, if you've got any specific costs that way, maybe printing posters, because most of us promote things on the web now, so costs are not as expensive as they used to be. But if you've got some particular promotional materials that you would like to make, maybe you want to involve some of the public and invite some of the public into any of your talks, and then it might be appropriate to actually spend a bit more time promoting it outside of the institute. So include those details too, and that's something else that we would fund in terms of seminar costs for a specific series. Okay, I think that's the end of all the details for that. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian. So this was again extremely detailed and very. We understand that it's extremely important to plan ahead before applying, have a really good idea of what this event is going to be. So thank you again. So now I'm introducing our next speaker. This is Dr. Helen Mott from the University of Cambridge. And Helen will be discussing our sponsored event grants. I can see you very well, Helen. And I also can see you very well, your slide.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't have my own slide. You can hear me now as well. I don't have my own slides because I couldn't share them properly. So I'll be saying next slide, please, when I need to.
Okay.
Just everybody. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. So I'm Helen Mott from the University of Cambridge. I'm an associate professor who is a biophysicist and structural biologist. And I have been on the grants committee for 3 years. I started around lockdown, so we actually didn't have so much work to do in the first year, at least for in-person attendance. But today I'm going to tell you about a very specific set of grants, which are the sponsored event grants. So next slide, please. Okay, so these are relatively small grants. They're up to £500, and these are really to help people to be able to host or to be able to organise single lectures or just small events. So these are not available to undergraduates, but they're available to everybody else. So you don't have to be a student or an early career member to apply. Anybody can apply, all the way up to full members and emeritus members. So obviously you need to apply in time. There's only 3 deadlines a year actually, and so we ask that the event should take place at least 1 month after the deadline that you choose to apply to, and that's an absolute minimum. So we're very happy if it's longer than that, because it takes a while for us to be able to assess the applications and then for you to find you have the money and all the rest of it. So obviously you don't want to be working with just a few days notice before the event when you find out that you've got the funding. So we really particularly welcome applications for events that are cross-institutional, regional and student focused. So this sounds like we need all three, but we don't. So if we had all three of these, it would be the perfect application, but we really would like it to be at least one of these three things. So being able to bridge between institutions or around a particular region, and also it's really good if you can do something which is student focused, or not, if not student focused, then focus towards early career members of the society. So this might include some kind of mentoring or networking sessions so that early career people can meet people who are further on in their careers and get some advice. So we really like to support those kinds of things as well. So what we actually support with these, this funding is really to support science. So we don't, because it's a very small event anyway, it's only they tend to be really one-day events. We don't want to cover catering costs, we don't want to cover venue costs, and we really don't want to cover honoraria either for speakers or gifts or anything like that. What we really want to do is to support the science itself. Now, of course, that might be accommodation for a speaker who's coming, who has to stay overnight or travel and things like that, because that's kind of the science as far as we're concerned. Okay, so next slide, please. So here's a couple of examples of some sponsored events that have been funded in the past. And what you can see is obviously they have to have a clear relevance to biochemistry and molecular biology, because this is the Biochemical Society, and so we want to fund things which are related to biochemistry. So we have here on the left, we have a one-day meeting on gap junctions in Glasgow. So you can see that this was arranged by somebody who was not necessarily a student, but they had a one-day meeting where they brought together people from across the UK in a very, very specific area. And the one on the left is actually a postgraduate grouping in Bath. So this was again a one-day event where they had a postgraduate event in the Department of Life Sciences. So you can see that we can have very different things, some which are maybe more like a one-day meeting for the UK, or even about something very student focused. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so like Ian said already, we have a budget and we have this money and we want to spend it. So we want to spend the money, but we want to spend it properly. So we have to be able to spend it on something which is worthwhile. So we have these really these three main criteria to be able to assess our grants. These are the audience, the networking opportunities between institutions, and also, of course, whether or not you really need the money. So the financial need for the support. And some of this is just so that we have all the information we need to be able to assess the grants. We're not looking for reasons to not fund it, we're actually looking for reasons to fund it. I'd like to think of it like that. So we want as much information as possible in the application so that we are able to actually assess whether or not we should be funding this grant. So next slide, please. So the first thing we want to know about is who's going to be coming to this. So this is a way of thinking. So obviously we don't really want to fund something which might just have 5 professors coming together, because that doesn't really seem like a very good use of funding. So think about who's going to come, and think really about how you're going to get more people to come. So think about how you're going to advertise it, who you really think, who you want to target to come, and how you're going to get them to come, and how they would find out about your event. And so then you can kind of have an idea about how many people you're expecting. And of course, this depends on the venue size that you've got as well. We want to know who's going to come. So are you expecting undergraduates? Are you expecting postgraduates or early career members? Or are you expecting an enormous range of people? And you'll just see who's going to turn up. And we also like to know if at least some of what you're doing is going to be geared towards students and early career members, because we obviously want them to benefit as much as possible from the society funding. So any kind of mentoring or workshops for early career members would be really very useful. So think then about what the benefit of attending this event will be for the audience. So this might not be just for early career members. Of course, this could be for people at all stages of their career, if it's networking or getting people with a particular focus together or something like that. So next slide, please. Okay, so the next thing we think about is, what do we mean by this cross-institutional networking? So it can sometimes seem quite difficult because this is a kind of a small event. So it might be something like just postgraduate students from one particular department or institution, or trying to kind of have an event together. But so how can they get cross-institutional networking going on in something like that? Well, it might be that they invite a speaker from outside, and then they have specifically set up some kind of networking between the postgraduates and that speaker, who would obviously be some kind of eminent scientist from another place. So think about how you can get some networking between institutions. And also, if you're having a one-day event in a particular university, then how can you kind of try to get people from the geographically close area to come to this? So if you're in I don't know, Manchester, then think about trying to engage people in other universities in the same city, because many cities have more than one university. So this is a really nice way to try and bring people together. So this is kind of a broad net, this networking idea. And it might be something like bringing together biochemists and physicists, because of course we can marry together life sciences and physical sciences and get new ideas and new opportunities that way. So try to think about advertising these events to be networking as much as you possibly can. And then this kind of gives you an idea. Think about how you can promote your event. So how you can promote it not just within your institution, but in other institutions nearby. Even if they're only half an hour away by train, people might still want to come for the day to see something really interesting. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the last part, of course, we need to know what you're going to use the money for. So we really need to know as much as we possibly can about the costs. Now, we appreciate that £500 is all that's given for this. It may cost more than that. So obviously you may well be applying to lots of different places for money, or you might have some institutional support. So we just want to know, have you thought about how much it's going to cost, and have you got a clear idea about how you're going to get the rest of the money that you need? So for example, if it's going to cost a couple of £1,000, then you might say, I've got £1,000 from here, and I'm going to apply for £500 from here and £500 from you. So we just need to know that you've got some kind of idea about where the money is going to come from. And we appreciate that often you need to get sponsorship from many different places to be able to run these events. And then we need to know what the money is going to be used for. So these are just some examples. I mean, they could be travel bursaries for people to attend, or for speakers to come. If you're doing some kind of workshop rather than a lecture, then you might need some kind of consumables or worksheets or something like that. That's fine. So just remember, we don't pay catering and venue costs, but everything else, we just really want to know why you need this level of support from the society and what you're actually going to spend it on. And then, of course, remember that you need to acknowledge the Biochemical Society for funding whenever you advertise this event, and in all of your promotional material. Okay, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. That was another really useful presentation, I'm sure, for the future applicants. Basically, we have now finished our sessions on the different grant schemes that we wanted to explain today. And so now we can welcome questions for any of the speakers. If you have a question, please type it in the question box as shown in the image on the screen. We already have some questions that arrived during the talks, and so I'm going to decide. I think I'll distribute this question. So basically, I have here a first question. So I think, Joanna, you will be the appropriate person to answer that one here today, related to your talk today. So someone is asking, how soon can a new member apply for a travel grant? I think you are muted Oh, I cannot hear you, Joanna.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, we are with you.
You know, the famous or infamous mute button. Yes, so it really depends on the length of your BS membership. You know, if you have a year membership, you know, 1 year membership, then you are eligible to apply only after 12 months. Okay, but if you have a multi-year membership for 3 years, then you are eligible only after 6 months. So of course, you know, it's much more beneficial to have a multi-year membership in this respect. So it is also, I'd like to mention that able to apply for a bursary to attend one of our own society events immediately. So immediately after joining the society.
Great, thank you so much. I have another question now for Ian, I think. So Ian, for sponsored seminar grants, do you need a confirmed speaker list before applying?
Well, that's a great question. The short answer is, no, you don't need a complete confirmed speaker list. So we appreciate that it might be difficult without funding to get a complete confirmed list, particularly ahead of time, or so ahead of time as you want to plan these and you apply for funding. We do expect you to have potentially approach some of the speakers, have an idea of who you're going to approach and what they're going to talk about, and if they're likely to actually come, so we can get a good idea of what the balance of your speakers are going to be. So you don't need a full confirmed list, but the more information you can give us on the speakers that have confirmed that you do have that are committed to there, and the ones you're going to approach, and maybe some backups, would be the most helpful in terms of enabling us to assess the program itself.
Brilliant, thank you so much. I have a question related to sponsored event grants. So I think I'm going to ask Helen to answer this one. So Helen, the question is, what is classed as a small event for the sponsored event grants?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. I think really it's something which is like a one-day meeting. We don't want to kind of give money to Gordon conferences or something which is very big and has plenty of sponsorship already. But what these events are, they can really be anything that is related to biochemistry. It doesn't really, there's not one very particular thing that we would sponsor. It doesn't have to be face-to-face, it could be virtual. And it could be aimed at undergraduates, or it could be aimed at any career stage, really. So it could be a one-day meeting, it could be a postgraduate research day, it could be some kind of workshop or training event, it could be some kind of career-focused event for early career members, or it could just be a single lecture where you want to bring in a very eminent scientist for a lecture. This is really only geared for things which are for undergraduates and above. If you're looking for something for school students, for example, then these would come under scientific outreach grants instead.
Okay, thank you so much, because I actually had a follow-up question, and I think you answered it, because it was, are there any schemes available to undergraduates?
Well, that's just one of the schemes that.
Okay, so maybe you can answer that one as well.
But the scheme, there are lots of schemes obviously available for undergraduates.
That's true.
So first of all, there are student bursaries, which can be used for coming to Biochemical Society meetings or training schemes. We have care and assistance grants. They're open to undergraduates as well. So this is if you need additional funding to come to meetings, if you need childcare or carer support, or extra money for some kind of special accessibility or disability needs. We have the Corner Fund. This is for student and early career members for travel for collaborative visits. We have the Student Opportunities Grants, which are really great. These are very small pockets of money, which are for students to be able to develop very specific skills to boost their CV. So to learn something new, which they can kind of develop a skill. And of course, we have the summer vacation studentships as well, which are for people to go and work in research labs. So these are really all schemes which are available for undergraduates.
That's brilliant, thank you. And this last one, I think you don't need to be a member of the vacation summership. So just to,
Exactly.
I think, yeah, yes, that's great. Thank you. So I've got a question here for Joanna. So Joanna, which countries are applicants eligible to apply for the Travel Award for International Skills and Knowledge Exchange, please?
Okay, well, this is of course a very relevant question for the TAFISCE scheme. These are the countries classified as lower income economy countries, and these are classified and listed by the World Bank. So the society follows the classification by the World Bank, and this classification is updated regularly, and is the list of countries, the current most updated list of countries is available at the society's website. So please look for the list over there.
Great, thank you so much. Brilliant. So I've got one here, I think for Ian. So Ian, for grant applications in general, are there any different criteria for students in the UK versus students in other countries, please?
Okay. No, they're not different. So our criteria and application processes for all of our grants are exactly the same for UK applicants and for international applicants. So the best way to find the information is go to our website, biochemistry.org, where you'll find links to all of our different schemes, all our different bursaries. Click on those links and it will give you all the criteria and a link to the application form. And that will be the same wherever in the world that you are applying from. Sorry.
Thank you, brilliant. I've got another one for Joanna, is about the travel grants. So do they cover the airfare, registration and accommodation?
Oh yes, absolutely. So exactly as you said, Stéphanie, we need to, as I mentioned in my presentation, we need to have a very detailed breakdown of what is really needed for these particular costs associated with attendance to the event that you want to go to. So certainly both airfare, any travel fare, in fact, not just airfare, but any travel fare, and accommodation costs are very much eligible.
Great, thank you so much. I've got one for Ian. Can non-society members apply for funding?
Right, so all of the grants that we've discussed today, individuals have to be a member of the Biochemical Society to apply for. We do have some schemes where non-members can apply. Helen's already mentioned the scientific outreach grants. You don't need to be a member to apply for one of those. We also have the diversity in science grants and the Krebs Memorial Scholarships, for which you don't need to be a current member of the Biochemical Society to apply. And if I can mention the website again, if you go to the website, you can find details of all of those, along with all the other grants and bursaries that we provide.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know it's very well indicated on the website. There's a sign next to each grant title. So please go on the website, and that will be very clear. And I have here a question for Helen, I think. So Helen, regarding our new online attendance grants that were briefly mentioned earlier, how can an applicant demonstrate active participation at an online event?
Oh, thank you, Stéphanie. Yes, these are relatively new grants, which of course, when conferences went virtual, people started to have hybrid meetings or sometimes online only meetings, which now have become more of the norm. So we realized we had to come up with a new scheme for them. So these are basically available for you to be able to go to a virtual meeting. And within the application form, we asked for you to demonstrate your active participation. So what do we mean by that? So what we want to know is whether you're joining a particular specific workshop, for example, or a particular networking session. You might be presenting virtually. You might be leading a session, of course. Sometimes events are completely online, so you might be leading an entire session. Or you might just be, as in many other conferences, just submitting an abstract, which will be going in to be considered for a poster or for a short talk or something like that. So all we really need to know is, are you actually specifically going to something and and you're not just going to sit there and watch and not participate at all. So we really want to know that you're doing something active as part of the online event.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the Q&A session now. If there are more questions, please continue typing them, and we will answer to you through the chat, okay? Because I've got a few announcements to make now. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and a big thank to the speakers. Again, you can also not only have your question in the chat now that we'll answer just after the webinar close, but you can also continue the conversation online. You can follow the Biochem sorry, on Twitter. So and also on PPP Publishing. So it's at Biochem or at PPP Publishing on Twitter. So as mentioned before, the Biochemical Society offers a large portfolio of funding opportunities, okay, so larger than the one we discussed here today for all career stages. So again, to find out more information on upcoming deadlines and how to apply, please visit our website. We welcome suggestions for future topics and speakers for feature in this Biochemistry Focus webinar series. If you have an idea for a webinar in 2023, we invite you to submit a proposal for an upcoming webinar. Again, you can find more information also about the webinars. Propose your webinar, and you can also watch previous recording on www.biochemistry.org/events and training. So this is all on the website available, right? And all of our upcoming webinars are listed on our website as well. And if you have missed any of the over 50 webinars that we've already run as part of the series, or would like to watch them again, please visit our website or YouTube channel. The recording from today's webinar will also be available to watch within the next couple of weeks. Please, if you're interested, join us on the 29th of June at 2 o'clock BST for our next webinar, Careers in Clinical Trials, when our invited speakers will discuss the different routes and job opportunities available within the industry across various career stages. Finally, I want to highlight how it's really important to stay connected and engage with your fellow molecular bioscientists. Join the Biochemical Society's community of researchers and specialists and take advantage of key benefits, including discounted registration fees for society courses and meetings, exclusive access to a wide range of grants and bursaries, personal online access to 2 of their journals, and more. And again, visit their website to find out more. Just want to share a little bit of my experience as I think the panels here today. I've been a member of Biochemical Society for over 20 years. And really, my membership with the society has supported my career since I started my postdoc. I do remember to have my first conference, the first conference I attended here in the UK was on membrane trafficking, and it was organized by the Biochemical Society. I have met there many scientists at various stages of their career, with whom I still connect today. And also, thanks to the Biochemical Society travel grant schemes, I've been able to travel to the United States to present my work in prestigious conferences. This really allowed me to drag the important people in the field and come and look at my poster, and this type of experience was invaluable. So we are now wrapping up this webinar, and again, a big thank you for our speakers today and for attending, and thanks to all, and goodbye.